Just blows me away. We're still doing Julia Roberts. We're going to be doing her sudashas now. At the age of 18, Julia Roberts collected $29,000 from a trust fund with which to launch her career. We already mentioned that earlier. Now, the sudasha was going on at the time was Aquarius Leo. Now you tell me, if this dasha period was going on in someone's life, could we make a case that the person was going to get $29,000? Not 29,000?
Specifically 29, right?
Well, in other words, a sum of money which is extraordinary for that person. Most 18-year-olds get $29,000. I think that was a lot of money. Because I'm 58 years old, and I think that would be a lot of money, for me anyway. So here we go. So the dasha is Aquarius Leo.
Aquarius has four lagna.
Okay.
The exchange between the Sun and Venus moves to the 7th and 9th.
Yes. First of all, remember the yogas we've been talking about. The one that I like the best out of all this involves the Lord of the 8th house, i.e. Rahu, and all those planets in Leo and the sign of Leo itself. Okay? It so happens that the dasha, the paka of the dasha sign is what we're looking at. Remember, the dasha sign or the paka of the dasha sign is our starting point to determine if the dasha is going to deliver the fruits. The fruits are this dana yoga, the Srimanta yoga, stuff that we've been talking about. So the paka of the dasha sign happens to be the sign Aries, which is 10th house. It's significant for her career. In there is Rahu, who's mutually aspecting all the planets in Leo. So by the graces of Lakshmi, all the potential of that Srimanta yoga unfolds completely. The Antardasha sign is Leo itself. Okay? So do we have to bend, twist, pull, turn, or extrapolate, an interpretation of this dasha? I don't think so. Straight away, time for wealth to occur in the life of this person. She hasn't become famous yet. The Aruda Lagna isn't involved yet. Right? As soon as the dasha sign that has anything to do with the Aruda Lagna becomes involved, then not only is she wealthy, but she's famous wealthy. Okay, so next.
What year did she become, discovered for the movies or whatever?
Between the age of 21, so it was at the age of 21, it was about 3 years later, she started making films on the big screen.
Pretty Woman, was that the first big one?
Pretty Woman was in there. There were a whole bunch of them. And she's still going on even up to the year 2000 when she did Aaron Brockovich, which is a very successful film. In any case, from the age of 21 to the age of 30, the wealth, the fame, everything starts to manifest. Now, so all of this took place during the dashas of Aquarius, to start with. In other words, 10 films. She starred in 10 successful films between 1988 and 1997. Those periods included the dashas of Aquarius and the dasha of Taurus that came after it. So when did the dasha of Taurus start? 1994. So between 1994 and now is when she became mega famous. She was well known up till that time, but she became mega famous, like one of the superstars of the silver screen between this time frame. So now, the dasha of Taurus, what does that bring into the picture? Taurus is the Dharapada, and Taurus is in a trine from the Aruda Lagna. This is when fame should come about. Also, the Lord of Taurus, Venus. The Paka Rashi happens to be Leo. which is the focus of this the Srimanta Yoga, Dana Yoga scenario that we've been talking about for the last half hour. So not only is wealth continuing to come in, but then fame is coming in at the same time. Again, the Dasha Rashi has the Dharpada, and it's enshrined to the Aruda Lagna. Big time period for her.
Why the fame?
Because it's enshrined to the Aruda Lagna. Aruda Lagna means status, recognition, being recognized internationally. The native's position rises in the world according to the positioning of the Aruda Lagna. Any dasha, when you're analyzing any dasha, rasi dashas, the dasha associated significantly with the Aruda Lagna brings very significant events for the person's worldly success and status. Even if you're timing such things as marriage and childbirth, Aruda Lagna is important. All right, so now coming to the subject of marriages and children, she had a whole series of relationships and never got married until she finally married Lyle Lovett, the rock country music star.
That's her first marriage.
That was her, yeah, that was her first marriage. That only lasted for 2 years, but anyway, she got married. Let's see here. June 25th, 1993. She got married. This occurred in the sudasa of Aquarius, Cancer. All right, now does Aquarius and Cancer have anything to do with does Aquarius and Cancer have anything to do with marriage in this chart? Why should the sign Aquarius give marriage? You know, let me hear a few reasons. Thank you, yes. Aquarius is directly the Upapada Lagna. There must be a connection between the Dasha Rashi and Upapada Lagna in order for marriage to occur. Here the Upapada Lagna is directly in the Dasha Rashi. Now, the subperiod sign, Cancer. Dark Arca is who in this chart? Moon. Absolutely. Exactly. Now, the Antardasha is a sign of Cancer. As Mihao was saying, that is ruled by the moon. The moon happens to be the dark arca in this chart. And the sign Cancer mutually aspects the Upapada Lagna. Keep in mind this mutual aspect stuff.
If this weren't her first marriage, but were her second marriage, would you use the same Upapada?
No.
You would use 8?
You're the 8th from the Upapada Lagna for the second marriage.
Right.
And then for the third marriage, you take the 8th from that Upapada Lagna. And then the 8th from that Upapada Lagna to find the 4th, 5th, 10th, 15th marriage, and so forth. Actually, that sounds facetious, but actually I knew a person who was married 15 times. Anyway, it sounds strange, but it happens. Now, how do you do this? How do you know how many marriages a person is going to have? Well, actually, I can demonstrate this better with, okay. Yeah, we can do it with this one. So, the question was how do you determine from the Upapada Lagna these different marriages? So the first marriage is the Upapada Lagna. Second marriage is the 8th from the Upapada Lagna. Third marriage is the 8th from that Lagna. Where does it stop? Yes. It stops when the sign of the Upapada Lagna joins the Rahu Ketu axis. The Rahu breaks possibilities of future marriages. Okay, so this will be your first marriage here. Second marriage, if there were one, is going to be here. Is there going to be a third marriage? No. So she may have another marriage, probably will have another marriage, but that'll be it. Marriages.
So many
That's right. Okay, so let's see here. What's the problem with marriages in this chart? You know, the seventh lord is Saturn. Saturn also rules the Upapada Lagna, or Rahu rules the Upapada Lagna. There's a mutual aspect with Mars. The mutual aspect with Mars and the seventh lord and Mars in the sixth house is you can pretty much make marriage a difficult situation. Okay? Anyway, the Navamsa chart shows it a little bit more clearly. Maybe we can splash the Navamsa chart up on there briefly. Interesting, she has a Tapasvi yoga. That might have something to do with the marriages in its own right.
Well, this is not in trines to her lagna. This could
Yeah.
be a spouse who has the Tapasvi yoga.
Okay, so you're saying in Navamsa Tapasvi yoga to apply to the native it has to be in trines.
Trines to join the lagna.
That's a good point.
To
That's
the,
good.
To the lagna.
well, it is.
No, it's in a Kendra to Lagna.
Oh, well, no, wait a minute. Oh, not to her natal lagna, but to this.
Anyway, take Venus as a karaka for marriage, and you have all the planets all the malefic planets are all over it, like flies on, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Okay, Sun, Rahu, Ketu, Saturn, Mars, all aspecting Venus. She has a hard time with marriages. I think she was in love with Liam Leeson, and she's in love with this guy and that guy anyway. It's not a very easy thing. Now, another thing is that, as Tara is pointing out, the fifth karaka, or the putra karaka, sorry. Putra karaka happens to be the fifth lord. It's getting replaced here. It's getting eliminated by the sun, who's in the same degree. Or is that right? No, Mars is eliminating the sun. Your Mars is eliminating the sun as the putra karaka. So Pitri karaka, sorry.
So the father is going to suffer.
Yeah, so the father suffers because the Pitri karaka is getting replaced by Mars. I don't know what the situation where their father was or how that panned out. Anyway, the thing of, childbirth doesn't look too good, as what to speak of marriage, so. Let's go on. So the dashas that are most significant are Aquarius Leo to start up her wealth and her position. Then further to that, the dasha period of Taurus. And then for marriage, Aquarius and Cancer. The thing about Cancer is that Cancer mutually aspects the Upapada Lagna, and the moon is joined there with Jupiter and Venus. Rather nice, lovely yoga for a marriage celebration. So, any questions on this before we go on to the next candidate?
In both the charts we've seen so far, the time of success was when the dasa quadrants to Bora lagna was there.
Uh-huh.
In both cases.
Uh-huh.
See what applies in the next case.
So you're saying that if dashas are in quadrants to the Hora Lagna, things take place. That was also, like as in Bill Gates' chart also.
Yes, it was.
Okay, so we'll use that as a talking point on next chart. So let's go on to Hugh Hefner. Everybody knows who Hugh Hefner is? Pretty much. The Lord of Playboy. He has some very interesting combinations in this chart. Hugh Hefner also borrowed money not also, Julia Roberts was given money to start her acting career. Hugh Hefner had to borrow money to start his magazine, Playboy magazine. So in the year 1953, he borrowed $600 to start Playboy magazine. By the time he was 40 years old, that was 13 years later, he was worth over $100 million. which is rather unique because, you know, up to that time, if you were into pornography, if you marketed pornography or in any way associated with this kind of industry, then you're either a communist or you were some kind of evil person, right? That was the going dogma in those days. To a lesser degree these days. But anyway, by the time he was 40, he had an empire involving clubs and involving casinos, involving movie theaters, involving the magazine, of course, and so many other extenuating results of Playboy magazine. Okay, so how do we find wealth in this chart? Give me a very simple, basic principle that we've been discussing so far. Huh? Sri Lagna is on the ascendant, first of all.
Aspected by its lord in the seventh,
But how's the Lord placed?
Yeah.
debilitated.
That's-
Oil,
Yeah.
isn't that interesting?
Here's the thing. Now, according to our initial definitions, if the Sri Lagna is aspected by its lord, who is in either exaltation or debilitation, person becomes wealthy, Srimanta. Right? Very simple definition. Now, in this case, the dispositor is also debilitated, i.e. Jupiter, which I'm not sure to what extent that'll participate here. But let's just say that the Lord of the Sri Lagna is aspecting Sri Lagna in his debilitation sign. The fact that these are in Kendras also to the Aruda Lagna would add a degree of fame to the mix as well. Okay? Now, somebody give me another yoga here. Yeah. Give me another yoga.
The second Lord is joint moon and it's Venus.
Yes.
Venus is second in the middle.
Yes. Perfect.
Yes.
Yoga.
Now. But that's right. But even more important than that is that Moon and Venus yoga aspect the second and the eighth house. Second and the eighth house here getting aspected by this Moon-Venus yoga. Moon rules are the 11th house, Venus rules the second house, but you know, verbatim, that's Sigdana yoga. Now, if they're both mutually aspecting the second and the eighth house, that, you know, raises the bar way up here somewhere. Okay, does everybody see how this works? We saw the same yoga or similar formation of it in Julia Roberts' chart. Second or eighth house, or their lords, mutually aspecting the Moon-Venus combination.
Two Mara Venus and Mercury.
Yeah, they're in Mara Nakara. Yeah,
Can Venus and Moon be mutual aspect, or do they have to be conjunction?
preferably conjunction. Yeah. So you don't have it then, do you?
I have mutual aspect.
No wealth for you. Sorry.
Those names associated with the second or eighth houses. You also have to associate with the second and eighth house. Or
Yeah.
eighth house.
The conjunct by 8 Ruler.
Okay, so we have at least two counts here to explain how this person had become, you know, so wealthy and influential. Again, if we can't explain it, then we have to go back to the books. If we don't want to go back to the books, well, then we ought to just have a party and have a good time. Forget about all this stuff. But you're frustrated about something, Satsuri?
Well, no, I just wanted to know.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay.
Do you have the dates when he married? And I think they had one child.
Yeah, we got all those dates. We got all those dates. Yeah,
Can we see it looking at that?
yeah. That's what we're going to do now.
Oh, sorry.
I know I kind of get carried away with anecdotal stuff sometimes, so sometimes you have to pull me back, that's fine. Okay, so events for Hugh Hefner. Okay, he was married in June of 1949. One thing I want to say also before I go on to that, for the dates and events and stuff. He said that there are exalted and or debilitated planets aspecting the seventh house. Then a type of Raj Yoga or a type of Dana Yoga occurs. Now the second, preferably the second lord or second house should be involved with this. In other words, exalted or debilitated planets linking with the second or the seventh house or both should form Raj Yoga. Now in this situation, it's the seventh house alone, whereas the second lord forms a separate kind of Dana Yoga. So you have one debilitated planet, i.e. the lord of Sri Lagna, and you have two debilitated nodes, two exalted nodes here. Exalted Rahu, exalted Ketu. So you see the interrelationship of these things, exalted planets and debilitated planets. The Sri Lagna is getting exalted, and the nodes are counting here as planets. Exalted nodes aspecting the Sri Lagna and the Lord of Sri Lagna and the seventh house. Debilitated Sri Lagna Lord aspecting the Lagna from the seventh house. These are all very core combinations to indicate Dana or the potentiality of it. Or otherwise, how does he become Hugh Hefner? How does he get the opportunity to enjoy all this incredible wealth and then, all these beautiful women? Another thing is here that 80% of Venus occupies auspicious Vargas in 80% of Sapta Varga. Right? 80%.
Well, and that moon Venus is that
Here's the
that tie-in with the second, the eighth. That's the
What do
the
you mean?
sexual, the capitalizing on the
What's
sexual
that?
end of it.
I'm sorry, I didn't get those
Eight-
points.
The eighth having to do with the sexual end of it. The 2-8 aspect of moon Venus.
Yeah, I think that seventh house has more to do with sexuality
Okay.
than the eighth house. And seventh house is the focal point of all these yogas here we're talking about. But I'm sure the moon Venus, in aspect with the eighth house is going to describe the kind of involvement this person has
Well, that's just,
professionally.
that Mars being Parivartan with Saturn.
Yeah. Are you puzzling over that Mercury Sun combination?
Yeah. Did he have homosexual partners as well?
Do you what?
Did he have homosexual partners as well?
He may have. He may have. I don't know if he has specifically. What's the yoga for homosexuality there you're talking about?
Commonly, when Mercury is weak and associated with the seventh house,
Mm-hmm.
at least there would be some homosexual partners.
Uh-huh.
Commonly.
Or Saturn.
Okay.
It's also hard to see, considering his implant.
Yeah.
So Mercury is eunuch.
Maybe even for only a short time it could
Right.
be there.
Which thing is that Mercury is becoming
Robert.
Hmm.
Mercury is eunuch.
Yeah.
With no sex.
Badaka?
Or-
It has it? Oh.
Or either sex.
Huh?
Either no sex or either
The
sex.
seventh house
Yeah.
is the bottom of the house
Oh,
for
it's in Badakstana. Right.
and Sanjay ji said yesterday that if planets are in the Badakstana,
They'll dominate.
they become the Badakas, not the Lord.
Right.
Actually, what happens is they dominate the effects, and the
Mm.
Badakesh only shows, okay, what are these Badakas actually promising? But yes, you're right. That's what he said. This will actually show that. Okay. Sorry?
And which should be the Badakesh, the Sun and Mercury.
No. You see, fact is the Badakesh is still Jupiter, but it's not. But the Jupiter is not acting as the one who's going to cause Badak. It only indicate maybe the source of Badak.
Well, which
Okay.
one would the Sun be the one to cause it? Because it's
Both
Mercury?
these, both Sun and Mercury.
The fact that the nodes are in dual signs exalted and Mercury Sun are in dual signs exalted, let's just say at least he had some experimentation going on there.
Not the problems.
So, I'm not questioning how you can see the source of wealth,
Sorry?
the source of this wealth. I mean, I can see wealth, but why it should be in the exploitation of sexual.
Well, because Venus is involved in the strongest of these Dana yogas. Venus,
And it's in the
as the Lord of the second house, wealth, And Venus and Moon aspecting the 8th house?
It's
Specifically,
actually made out of communication, out of publications.
Right.
But it
Well,
just
that's
happens to be Venus, so it's really the third house, isn't it? And
Mercury.
is that
Mercury's
Saturn,
communication.
Martin's Mars Saturn?
So Rahu is
No, Mars Saturn
Oh,
is
it's
change
Mercury.
places.
It's Mercury, all right. That shows. If you see here, this Mercury's in quadrants rule, it's going to define who people think he is.
Yeah, but Mars Saturn have changed places in the third and
So that will
fourth
show
house.
more about how he works, how he writes.
Yeah. The other thing is that Rahu in Gemini is very strong for communication.
Actually,
Working in communication, if it's in the 10th house, exalted. And Mercury, bring Mercury as the Lugna Lord into focus here with all these yogas.
But it's Bonic.
What's that?
Mercury is Bonic.
Yeah.
so there'll be some problems associated with this.
Actually,
Was he accused of a lot of things in the press and things like that? Was
Yeah. Oh,
He was, yeah.
That's it.
He was accused. There were lawsuits. There were all kinds of
Yeah.
things.
Well, that's it.
actually, I thought he was out of money now.
I don't know what he is now, but whatever he was at the age of 40 was something pretty spectacular.
You see, there's
But-
one specific combination here.
His daughter runs Playboy now.
Yeah. Well, that's another date that I was going to bring out here with a sudasa. So what's the other combination?
I was just going to point something out. You know, we were looking at this Moon-Venus combination, right?
Mhm.
One thing we didn't think too much about is this Aquarius.
Mhm.
When Venus is in Aquarius, we call it Sita in Lanka, being kidnapped by Ravana. So
Oh.
it can show some very diabolical things, or rather the degradation of Venus. It's not as pure anymore.
In the
You show-
sun.
and you can see it's causing wealth. It's also during the Hora Lagna.
Mhm.
It is all-
Interesting.
Yeah, it's basically Rahu-Venus combination.
Sita was the wife of Lord Rama, who was kidnapped by Lord Rama and was taken to his kingdom in Lanka, and that set up the whole reason for the Ramayana wars that took on. And that's a very interesting observation. Another thing on your point is that yes, Mercury is Bhattaka, but it's debilitated in the Bhattaka, which actually uplifts it.
Maybe that's what Mercury can mean business. So business, and it's in the house of sex. So this whole thing is just business based on sex.
Right.